And we're live. This is Mahab Ali, the co-founder of Virtually Connecting, coming to you from Cairo, Egypt. And we are live at Republica in Berlin. I'll ask the virtual folks to introduce themselves first, Joe and then Greg, and then I'll ask Christian and Lucy on site to introduce themselves.
I'm Joe Murphy. I'm the director of the Center for Innovative Pedagogy at Kenyon College in Gambier, Ohio.
Greg, you're muted.
Yep, there, I see that now. I am Greg. I am a technologist in the Boston area, and I'm very excited to hear about the conference. Thanks for having me.
I'm Lucy Patterson. I'm a co-organizer of a grassroots community hackathon in Berlin called Science Hack Day Berlin.
I'm Thomas Mboua from Cameroon. Actually, I'm a researcher and I'm focused in my research, my area focused just in scholarly communication, open education, open science, and the maker movement in Africa.
Hi everyone, I'm Christian. I'm the Education and Science Advisor to Wikimedia in Germany and also the on-site buddy for today's session.
Thank you for joining us. And actually, the key thing with which is what Thomas just said right now, when you connected makerspaces with open data and open science, is what I was hearing when I was watching parts of this Hacking the Ivory Tower panel that you guys were on. So could you tell us a little bit more about the panel and what you were talking about and the relationship between open and hacker spaces and maker spaces?
It's a bit complex question, but in fact, the idea of the panel was to launch a conversation because it seems like there is a silo between scientists or researchers and the rest of the society, and it's look like researchers are in the ivory tower where they feel comfortable and there is no conversation between them and other people outside the academia. So our idea by doing this panel was to hack this silo, and we tackle this problem with the idea of, or the question of how open tools or open source hardware open hardware can help us hack this silo in order to bridge the community or to bring scientists near the society and local communities. So that was the idea. If I have, you can.
No, I think we brought. There was a panel with 4 speakers, and we all come from slightly different places. So most of us had a kind of scientific background, except for Tarek, who was like a pure maker, like a hardware geek type of guy. And yeah, I think we all had slightly different. Some of us were from inside institutions, some of us were from outside institutions, some of us were from like Western context, some of us were from African context. So we kind of had slightly different perspectives on it, but we're all very enthusiastic about the idea of open science as more than just opening the literature, like open access or the data, but also opening the practice of science and making, through opening the equipment, making that more widely available, having more people involved in the practice of science.
And is that meant to be generally more accessible to the public, to anyone who is not necessarily an academic, or is it for education, like for younger kids, or is it a combination?
I think it's in every context. I don't know if there is a public. I think there's many different groups, communities, interests. I mean, maybe you want to talk about education. Who should be using this equipment? Is that?
In fact, for my concern, my focus was on higher education due to my background in biochemistry, because I have a background in biochemistry, and many people in the panel have a background in engineering and biology. And the idea was just to see how this tool can be helpful at the level of higher education. So I guess it was the primary public was higher education. So.
I know for in my situation, I think I'm interested in kind of bringing scientific practice into civil society, either as like a protest tool, like a means for gathering data, for activism maybe, or as a civic tool for all kinds of purposes. It could be environmental or like new circular economy solutions, or like resilient healthcare, or all kinds of different purposes. But like bringing it out of the academic context where you don't really get exposed to those potential needs, and putting it in different situations where those needs could come into contact with science as a practice. And yeah.
And what's important also to mention is that in our context, African context, and particularly the Cameroonian context, our labs are not very well equipped, and due to the lack of fund or something like that. So the open tools can help us, like very cheap equipment people build by doing biohacking, or by moving from the immaterial to the material, can be very helpful for us. You know, for example, when I was a student in biochemistry in Yaoundé, my specialization was molecular biology, but I was not able until my master's degree to achieve a PCA experiment due to the lack of this equipment. But now, when I saw that Biohacker was able to build new equipment very cheaply, and this is a chance for us in our context to use this equipment and to improve skills in STEM education.
That is really amazing. And I hear the same kind of thing here in Egypt, and I'm gonna find Tariq when he gets back to Cairo and figure out what they're doing in their space and whether they can help biologists and chemists as well as regular hackers. I think Greg has a question. Go ahead, Greg.
I have too many questions. I apologize for my ignorance. This is the first time I'm hearing about science hacking, and it's really fascinating. I wanted to know maybe about some examples of the kind of tools that you're using to promote open access in science.
I made this today. So this is maybe an example of a DIY microscope. So it's most of the parts are 3D printed, or they're very standard types of screws and bolts and washers. And it uses a Raspberry Pi camera and connects then to a Raspberry Pi. The magnification is not so super high, but in an educational context, it's already like a really useful tool that you can make for, I think, all of these, like except for the Pi, it costs around $5 to print something like this. And put it
wow. But you have to have the 3D printer.
Yeah, you can build your own 3D printer these days.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, you can print.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna look that one up.
I can see how you'll be running to Tariq in Cairo now.
So, promoting open science. The design of this water scope is open, so it's a CC licenses. That means that even if this water scope was designed in US, in Cameroon, I'm able to move the design and reify it in my context. So that is why we are trying to promote how we are trying to promote best practice in open access best practice in sciences. And also there is a strong community of activists using many platforms where they are able to share the design, many protocols, and many experiment video. So,
yeah, it's kind of doing science in the open like this. It's kind of like rethinking how science would have worked if it had started after the internet, kind of. So we communicate our science, our research with each other using digital tools. We communicate our equipment with each other using open source documentation, and we're also building communities around the creation and the use of these tools, which is a really important part, something that we talked about in the panel as well, how it's not enough just to make the literature and the data and even the tools open. You also need to like build communities of practice with people who understand how these things work and share and learn from each other and figure out how to do science in this new way, in this alternative way. So a lot of us are kind of working in community building projects. I think the GOSH network is a really good example of that. And that was represented in the panel as well by Jenny Molloy, who's one of the coordinators. And that's really a... And Thomas, of course. Maybe you want to talk about Africa.
I don't know, but perhaps she has another question. So
oh yeah, maybe we take some questions.
So there's one question from Gregory again, as far as I can tell from the chat. Can people really build their own 3D printer? I worked at Rhode Island School of Design, and I remember 3D printers looked like they were worth many thousands of dollars.
No, there's the RepRap is a...
But actually, in many lab, in many makerspace where I went, people are building themselves their 3D printer. Like in Cameroon, where I'm coming from, I have my friend based in the English part of Cameroon, and he's there since 10 years, and he has built his own equipment, his own 3D printer. But now the problem is about the filament, the plastic filament that you are using. So yes, that's the main problem. So for me, the idea, the problem is not the 3D printer. The 3D printer is working very well, but the problem is this first the filament, and because there are some solutions in such a way that you can do recycling, you can recycle the waste plastic and build your own filament. But the problem is that the diameter of the filament is not stable in all the size of the filament. So that is the big problem with 3D printing. So until now, people are obliged to order the commercialized one filament. But I hope many people are working to fix this problem of the size of the filament.
I also like lo-fi, like making things out of wood and stuff, and recycling, like repurposing other pre-existing things. Like sometimes 3D printing is a bit excessive. I don't know. It depends what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. If it's something that you can make out of wood, there's no need to go through that. But I'm just amazed by all the different civic missions of all of what you guys are doing. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I had an interesting conversation with some folks doing makerspace work a couple of years ago on exactly that point, that teaching people the cognitive skills of 3D visualization and all the things that you need to know to make a successful 3D design is substantially harder than getting them to think in 2 dimensions and, cutting out pieces, potentially with a computer controlled router or something like that. In a lot of cases, the cognitive skills are much more accessible to think in 2 dimensions and assemble than to create a 3-dimensional thing. So I think that is one of the neat things in this space, is actually addressing what's available to us and what's possible in the time allowed. I think that's one of the neat things I think about the kind of the hackathon approach, is getting people to think about, well, yeah, that's a great idea, but it's not doable in a weekend. So what can we pull off?
Yeah, definitely. We use a lot of paper, cardboard. I mean, if you're prototyping, then this is 3D printing is a tool for rapid prototyping, but sometimes it's too slow, and you need to use other things.
So tell us, I mean, you guys are so interesting, and we're going to go back and listen to your entire panel in full and then come back to you with questions on Twitter, if that's okay. But tell us, what have you been listening to in the conference? What have you been enjoying in the conference? What do you not like about the conference?
What do you like about Republica, and what do you don't like?
Any special sessions?
But in fact, Republica is a very big event, and there are a lot of things to see, a lot of things to at the same time. So I really want to be at many places at the same time, but I cannot, as you wrote on Twitter. So that is why what I lost during the event. But I really enjoy the diversity and the diversity present there, and also the engagement of people. So because when I come in the morning yesterday, I saw many people are lying to buy or to enter, and it was so amazing, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been to this conference for many years, and it's impressive the number of things they managed to bring together. By now, I think digital society is almost everything, or maybe I'm biased, I don't know. But it is a lot of content, and also they're very good at recording the sessions and then publishing them, and you almost don't need to go for that reason. So I tend to spend most of my time just trying to meet people and talk with people and hanging out at the makerspace and doing workshops. Alex Kuchera did this, by the way. I should give him credit. It was a very nice workshop, very ambitious. Anyway, yeah, so for me, that's the real opportunity is to be here in person and to meet people physically. And yeah, having the gig, the Global Innovation Gathering, meet here every year is a really good opportunity to catch up with people from the maker scene around the world.
What's the gig? Is it mainly people from the maker scene?
Yeah,
never heard of it.
I still think I'm not part of the network, and you know.
No, I'm not part of the network. Then they joined us during the Africa Open Science and Artway in Kumasi. So, and they was there, and I don't know. I really don't know more about them, but it's looked like they are doing a good job because they are connected with people doing amazing things, like people in South Sudan working with refugees in how to hack peace and doing amazing thing about on open science or citizen science in different contexts.
Yeah.
I mean, what just struck me was I was just in a session on the 10 years after the Cape Town Declaration, and I walked out of there, and I only walked, I think, 30 meters, which translates to roughly 40 yards for the American folks. And I sat in a session by the Syria Project, where they basically go through video material to find context about war crimes and any kind of abuse in war, and proof of that in video content that is published online, and they've built a tool around that. So it's not necessarily, I would say, the diversity of attendees. There are conferences that are doing much worse than that, but I don't think Republica is great, but they're on the right path, I would say. But I probably shouldn't be the one to say that in the but also the diversity of panels and sessions that you have, right? So
But something I was also surprised, not surprised, but the price of the for the participant is very high. You know, I have some friends there. When they hear that I am in Berlin, they really want to join the event, but they cannot afford. You know. They cannot afford. The price is very high.
They're much more expensive.
Yeah.
Conferences in Europe, it's just crazy. It costs half as much as the plane ticket or something.
Yeah,
I remember that I joined your event freely, so without paying anything during the Berlin Hacker Day, without paying.
Yeah, that's really important to us, that we have no barrier to entry in our events. This thing, I'm not entirely sure what Republica is for exactly, but I mean, I was interested to be here, to be in a session and to have it recorded and have this kind of record of this discussion, have this discourse, like in the Republica context, I think is quite, certainly in a Germany context, it's important. In kind of digital society context, it's also important. So that was kind of my main thing. A Republic is nice, but it feels a bit entertaining rather than, oh, I'm saying all the worst things.
No, go ahead. Let's not pretend this is recorded or anything.
Yeah.
No, but I can only support that. I mean, I think lots of the organizers and lots of the attendees see themselves as some kind of hipsterish digital avant-garde, which some of them, I would say they are, at least in their certain context, but some clearly are not, or depends on how you define that, I guess. But in terms of what Republica stands for, I think this conference is so big, with close to 9,000 attendees now, that they actually divided certain subtracks for anything from food to science to learning, education. So I think goes back to something we said in our session yesterday. You basically have 9 sub-conferences under one umbrella theme, and then you can just stumble into different conferences basically within 3 days. And I read somewhere a statistic that they have somewhat like 500 hours of program and sessions in 3 days. So you really can't, it's quite overwhelming, and finding a quieter space like this one actually is soothing to my mind, at least.
And I am not sure that you hear the announcement to move Republica to Africa. So
to Ghana, right?
It is. Republica will take place in December in Ghana.
Oh.
Yeah, tell us more about that, because Christian mentioned it yesterday, and we weren't necessarily applauding that. So we were wondering if it's what do you think of that?
They've already taken it to Dublin and to Thessaloniki as well. I haven't been. I don't know.
In fact, during the Geek Summit, we had a discussion because I asked them about the relevance of replicate Republica in Africa. What is the idea behind? But it's like all is already said, so my voice cannot go on, But I told them that for me, you have to support local initiative. You have to hear about our local community and try to make even great, starting from grassroots. But Republica Africa, for me, is like a replication of something happened. But they told me that no, the format will not be the same, and I'm just waiting.
We had the same concerns yesterday. I just wanted to hear you say it.
I was not part of this decision. I just heard the announcement there, like everybody.
I mean, I think back in the day, Republica did make sense. It was like a blogger conference.
Yeah.
This is how it started, and it was a small community back then, and it really connected people together who were dealing with the same issues. So then it had its purpose, but now it's trying to be everything, I think, and yeah.
In the opening session yesterday, something I only noticed it in like a half sentence, but one of the organizers said that they are actually planning for growth, and both locally opening up more spaces around this area to make it even bigger. But I think it speaks a lot to a conference organizer's goal if that is something you say at the opening session, if that is your overall goal to strengthening brands and trying to grow for growth's purpose, I guess, that wouldn't be my mindset if it were any kind of conference that I would be involved in. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, also maybe the pressures to grow have made them make some interesting decisions. The amount of corporate sponsorship that's here, very visible corporate sponsorship. So I don't know who the main sponsors are this year, but
IBM is among them, as always.
Google has been in the past. And then at the same time, they have like Tor projects and like speakers from like digital rights movement. And it's a very interesting culture clash.
Paradox.
Yeah. Yeah, we had Chelsea Manning this year. Yeah, somehow doesn't feel right.
So you said that the Republica conference separated into like different areas, like multiple conferences, you said. So what does science hacking fall into?
What was your conference theme? Was it Tech for Good? No.
I think we were on the gig.
Tech for Good.
Tech for Good?
Yes, Tech for Good.
The track was called Tech for Good, as we recall, but just to how do you say that? Integrate that in a wider scenery. There were also lots of blockchain events around that theme, for example. So, as we mentioned yesterday, blockchain is one of the big buzzwords of 2018 Republica, and you can have many opinions about blockchain, but pretty sure not everything is good about that.
Do you get to understand what it is if you didn't, or do you just hear it a lot? And
what it is? Does anyone really know what the blockchain is?
You just write it up into every funding proposal that you have, and you'll figure it out then. Pro tip right there.
Yeah, I mean, as Science Hack Day, we've taken part in Republica a few times before, and actually in 2014, Republica even organized a Science Hack Day. So they always they liked the idea, but we never, to be honest, we never really kind of felt at home here. Like we never really connected with a big community here. I don't know. I think it's outside of GIG, which is I guess one of these conferences within the conference that brings people here, like, and grows a community. There's not really a lot. There's not really a lot to for us to grab onto here, actually. So.
And in the end, I mean, what is, I think, difference to, there's a train passing. I'm not sure if you can tell. I think what differs this, what makes this conference different from lots of academic, be it science-oriented or education-oriented conferences, or just like an NGO-driven, community and cause-driven hacker day or something like that, is these people, this is basically an economy that has evolved around this. So the people organizing this make a living off of this. And they're not into one bigger organization, but basically they formed an organization to make this happen every time. And you can tell that their lives kind of depend on that, on this working and on growth and all that, right? So, and I'm not sure what to say about that, right? So I can see that they need like a place to sleep and pay the rent. But still, it's not the ideal environment to be critical of big tech giants, for example. Does that make sense to you, or am I on the wrong foot with that?
I think they're always looking to try and make it better, and they're always like, they have made some considerable changes to the way that they've made some changes to the way that the event runs. Like this year, they reduced the number of stages. Last year, they brought in a much bigger kind of networking area that they didn't really have before. So they do try to change it, but I think they need to do a lot more, and it's hard for them to get to that point. And I think it grew in a bit of a funny direction, kind of lost the organicness of its growth somehow, and yeah, I don't know.
So I guess I'd be interested in knowing where you go from there. And I think even within the maker movement, we've got all of these different reasons that people get involved and that organizations get involved. Within the open science movement, I think you've got a very similar thing about diversity of reasons. And now you're at a conference where they're also talking about smart cities and privacy and all these other digital culture issues. I wonder how you go about integrating that. What's to kind of pin it down to one sentence? What's the use of of digital culture hipsters in your work? I'd just be interested in your thoughts about that.
We have all of these sexy contemporary topics that are all important in their own way. Like, how do we connect them together? Like, how do we connect science hacking or open source hardware with smart city, which is a very real thing that one could do.
Particularly my view about Republica. Republica is not a specific event about open science. It's not. We have a specific event related to open science, like GOSH, where we are dealing only with open science. The next GOSH will be held in Shenzhen, in Shenzhen, in China, in October. And during this kind of meeting, we have a lot of people. We have the same values. We have the idea the idea of commons. the commons good. Find the commons good. The idea of fighting against all kind of authorities. The idea of democratize the knowledge. Try to bring everybody at the same level. So, but there is also, as you told, many sexy names, sexy brands that people follow. Then there is for me, there is a fair open science, and there is also a business side of open science, because many people now are using open science to do business. Using open science like branding names, but the fair open science is there, and there are a lot of few people doing keeping the right way to do. So basically, we have to stay strong, and avoid to the fair event in open science cannot be funded or cannot be like this event, like Republica. You will not find many companies like I saw here in the fair event related to open science. Is many times is small group trying to solve local problem, just small problem without a very huge thing or equipment. So open science is a grassroots movement, When it's become very technical and very sophisticated or very huge, it's not open science. So that is another thing.
So I think for me personally, I'll be presenting tomorrow, and it's just like a small thing. But the motivation to present here for me was that this is an opportunity basically to present what you're working on to a broader audience and to lure some people in and make yourself and your projects and your thoughts visible. But this is not the place for deep discussions, at least not in these sessions. If you're too deep in, if you're too academic, if you're too scientific, you'll probably be rejected. I never try. I'm usually not too scientific or too deep. But what it does, it presents you somehow, and it gives you somewhat of a platform. And I think the art is then to be able to use that platform for your purpose somehow. So to maybe to hinge something to it, like you're doing, and then to present a certain issue. So this morning I was in a session on decolonization. decolonialization. I'm really bad at that. But simply that issue is presented. I don't actually, I'm not going to speak on the quality of the panel because I can't really judge on it, but it doesn't really matter. Because this topic is now on the agenda of Republica. This is where people look throughout the year of what is kind of hot in the tech sphere. At least in Germany they do. And to at least present that topic and to have that in the header somewhere, or open education, or open science, or hacking the ivory tower, whatever it is kind of an opportunity and a presentation in itself, regardless of the context, I would say.
As I said during our discussion before the panel, the idea of hacking the ivory tower is also the decolonization of the mind. Not the decolonization of the mind from you as a Western researcher, you know, in order for you to accept the research done by Global South, for example, to accept it as relevant research and to stop the, because many researchers in Western countries really don't consider our results, and particularly in biology, in hard sciences, you know, because since you don't have the well equipped, you are not well equipped to assess experiments. So our results are a little bit not considered. So, and that is also the idea that we can do good things in our context with low cost material, and you should, as a Western researcher, you should accept this. You should
be aware of your standpoint.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
that is also another side of decolonization, because when we are talking about decolonization can go in both sides. It's not only it's also to change our mindset about one area or one region.
Yeah, that's a great point, Thomas. Thank you for bringing that up.
And I guess that's it. It's kind of a bit disappointing when you don't find yourself having deep discussions with someone during or after your session who comes from a different sphere and has a lot of expertise in, I don't know, smart city or blockchain. But yeah, maybe it's more about the fact that it's on the agenda and it's a kind of starting point. And maybe that's the advantage of being curated into a program by digital hipsters, is that they're like trying to get ahead of the curve and do the cool thing before it becomes mainstream. And so
you're officially cool.
I mean, I was going to say that I think a lot of the ideas that you're saying are not mainstream anywhere, right? So I think it takes time for people to absorb them or to start to appreciate them or to imagine them. I mean, I'm very into open, but I didn't know all this stuff that you guys are saying. And it's going to take a while to sort of like decide that, oh, I want to join that movement and this is what I'm going to contribute to it. And so I think just this conversation here was sparking a lot of ideas for me, at least, and opening up a lot of different avenues for thinking about what you guys are doing. And then getting people to actually start working in it enough that they can actually have a more intelligent conversation with you about it takes time. But you never know. Like you might have gotten one or two people in the audience interested in starting to do this kind of thing, and they'll, like, I'm gonna go follow up with the Egyptian guy, for example. And I've been interested in this for a really long time, but never actually got around to doing too much about it. You know, so
sometimes you just need to find the right route in, find the right context for you, and yeah, it was the same for me some years ago, I think.
If you say it often enough, somebody will eventually get it and listen and understand.
Isn't it? There's a principle from sales, not that I have worked in sales, but take 7 touches. So 7 times you need to like get somebody with a topic before they sort of appreciate that it's meaningful. I don't know.
I had to admit that I used to work in sales, and
it's true.
True.
Okay. I see we're 45 minutes in. We don't want to keep you guys longer than you need to be away from the event. I guess you're enjoying the open air, but
That's actually fun. I don't know. Maybe one last question and then we head out.
Sure. Go ahead. Joe or Greg, do you have any questions?
Sure. Any main takeaways from this conference that you might bring back to your work?
Takeaways, things that you take from Republica and think about for the future. I mean, for me, like the work that we did to prepare for the panel was like every time you get an opportunity to speak in public, you really kind of it's another opportunity to really crystallize your thoughts, kind of find ways to express them, also in relation to other people. So for me, it was it helped me to kind of push on my thoughts about what it is that we're doing and why, and trying to also to be able to formulate it in a positive way so that we can say what it is that we need to go forward.
It just occurred to me that when we were talking about hacking the ivory tower to make the ivory tower accessible, hacking is itself as a culture not accessible to a lot of people and not understandable to a lot of people. So there's that, what you were just saying here is like how to express it so that people who aren't part of the culture can understand it and appreciate why you're doing it. It's a great point.
Yeah, we always have trouble with this word hack. We always have to counter it and say it's not illegal. It's not what it is. It's like exploring the limits of a system and seeing how you can push past them or subvert them or improve or make it better, make it do what it should be doing. And we want to do that with science. So.
In fact, for me, when I get Republica, for me is like the continuation of my reflection in many subjects with then like Lucy Patterson, because and Jenny Molloy and Joe Averman, since we are too far, but this physical interaction, everywhere we are meeting, we still have this critic discussion about open science, because Lucy is also very critical about open science, and it's not a law in the media to criticize open science, you know, but it's the occasion for me, the opportunity for me to continue the discussion with such friends, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Same.
Every time you have to discuss about how do you think about funding in institution, how the funders shape the agenda of the research, how and this kind of discussion. So even after the panel or before the panel, we are every time discussing about this kind of thing.
Yeah, you have to have those conversations in person. So it is good that Republica brings people together. But even if we just talk to each other, it's also a good thing. But we talk to other people.
Yeah.
So, and you?
I think for me, I'm trying to put a positive spin on what we said earlier, because what you really learn here, I think, at least what I learned here is that presentation and communication matters more than I like, actually. So I don't know about you two, but when I have a session at a conference like Republica, and especially at Republica, I think way more about the way I present it, how to make it accessible in, like, let's say, marketing speak for people to actually get what I'm talking about. And I'm not going to expect any deep level kind of discussion, but I think that's something that we, as lots of open communities, can take away from this as well. There's a space for critical discourse, academic discourse around science and education, whatever it is, and the nuances. But there is also a place where you have to be bold and brave and stand in front of that audience and try to actually convince people who have never heard of whatever you're speaking about. And that has its qualities as well, I think. And it's easy to make fun of that, and I am guilty of that, but it's also good to practice that, because that's really also a space that matters.
Thank you, Christian. And on that note, I think we'll let you guys go. Thank you so much for taking the time to virtually connect with us. And I hope we'll have other opportunities to talk to you again, Toma and Lucy. And good luck with everything that you do, following what you're doing. And like I said, I'll watch the panel and send you guys more questions.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, hope this won't be your first and last session.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
We'll go off the air.